that he recently was bought out, meaning that the defenseman, most part, as a considerable portion of the players that were suspect he's going to be moving on from their respective teams, did so with their new signings. Therefore, in the spirit of things, I'm going to go over quite a few of these contracts, dissect them, and give my thoughts on them. And with that, here is 2021's free agency thus far, recapped. While this may seem like a head scratcher, for some, it was for me at first. Jones, after being bought out from San Jose, has made his way over to Philly due to familiarity, as Jones revealed that the Flyers' current goalie coach, Kim Dinobot, was actually his coach during his days with, while saying, "He knows my game very well. We know how to work together. It was a factor, and hopefully we can pick up where we left off and I can get my game back trending to where it was a couple years ago," he says. Similarly to Carter Hart, who is coming off a rough season. Jones, who sported a 3.28 goals against average and a .896 save percentage last season, is going to be looking for redemption. The deal itself seems like an invitation for the netminder to prove himself once again and return to form. Definitely the most controversial contract and character on this list, DeAngelo, after getting bought out by the Rangers, will be looking for a fresh start in Raleigh, as DeAngelo was a spectacle last season in the Big Apple, not necessarily for his on-ice play, but rather for his off-ice antics. Therefore, the decision made by Canes GM Don Waddell surprised many once it was announced. I think knowing how cheap Waddell has demonstrated himself to be, him and Joe Sakic, who let Grubauer just walk, are kind of in the same category as my opinion as far as that goes, but I think the Canes are benefiting from the fact that DeAngelo was probably having a rough time finding a new home, and therefore they were not only able to benefit from his reputation in a strange sense, but also the fact that he recently was bought out, meaning that the defenseman would be more willing to take less, I would say, given the fact that he's going to be getting paid by two teams regardless this coming season. DeAngelo will most likely be picking up where Dougie Hamilton left off on the first pairing and will be running the first power play unit. Not exactly the type of place I would picture Braden Holtby ending up given his known political beliefs, but hey, it's definitely a change from Vancouver. Anyways, it makes sense for Dallas to want to bring him in for some insurance, as Ben Bishop has been riddled with injuries on and off since arriving in Dallas, as he didn't play a single game last campaign due to being sidelined. Therefore, even though the Stars were able to keep Khudobin from Seattle, adding some extra insurance in net makes sense. Holtby, who has struggled his past two seasons statistically, recorded a below .900 save percentage in back-to-back campaigns. Therefore, he'll definitely be looking to hopefully bounce back in the Lone Star State. And really, knowing that he will be more insulated than before could allow for number 49 to bounce back in the end. Definitely the biggest free agency signing on this list, Hamilton ended up going elsewhere after Carolina wasn't budging on their offer, and really New Jersey was the front runner for a while, so it didn't surprise me that the Devils landed him. As a right-shot defenseman who decided to bet on himself, was able to get a deal that best reflected his worth in the end. For Devils fans, even though the contract at first glance analytically may not look great, after it was broken down by JFresh, the projections didn't actually look that bad. Hamilton, who was a key contributor to Carolina's power play last season, tied for the 6th most points among defensemen, scored on the man advantage. Therefore, knowing that the Devils had the 4th worst power play percentage last season, this will definitely help it improve. I think most of us pretty much knew that Yandle wouldn't be back for Florida, as the NHL's Iron Man wasn't too happy with the prospect of being scratched earlier last season. This, paired with the fact that he was made to sit out for Game 3 against Tampa Bay, led many to believe that the marriage between Yandle and the Cats was coming to an imminent end. Yandle, who has been a proven puck mover for Florida for quite some time, let familiarity factor in when deciding to come to Philly. Once I became a free agent, the first team that I looked at was the Philadelphia Flyers. Obviously, having AV before and playing with Kevin Hayes helped my decision. What Chuck Fletcher has done this offseason, bringing in guys, and I know for me, all I want to do is win, and coming to the Flyers gives me the best chance for that, he said. This is another instance, in my opinion, where a player being bought out was an advantage, as the defenseman decided to sign for less than $1 million on a one-year deal. As Fletcher, who will have 3 D-men making $5 million or more already next season, had to be thrilled at the bargain of a contract he got Yandle to agree on. After watching Jamie Oleksiak depart from Dallas, the Stars were definitely on the hunt to replace him. Despite seeing Boston and Colorado becoming potential matches as well for number 20, Dallas is another team that definitely makes sense. As unlike Boston, Dallas was able to offer Suter the term that he was wanting. While this may seem like a steep value, in all actuality, it isn't a terrible overpayment in my opinion, as Suter, who can still log lots of minutes, seemingly still has a lot to give. And aside from just his on-ice production, Stars GM Jim Nils seemed equally interested in the intangibles that the defenseman will be adding to the team as well, while saying, "Ryan is a true professional, and he will be a great fit in our top four," Nils said. He has a huge influence on the game with his ability to diffuse plays, and which injects a sense of calmness into his teammates. He will be able to play in every situation. As a veteran of 16 NHL seasons, his wealth of experience will be a great addition to our dressing room, he says. Suter, who will likely be on the first pairing with Miro Heiskanen, will not only be able to mentor his partner, but will also be a key contributor on the penalty kill as well moving forward. So we pretty much knew that it was going to be Andersen that was taken by Carolina, as Don Waddell was pretty adamant about wanting a proven veteran netminder to be his number one moving forward. After letting up-and-comer Alex Nedeljkovic go and letting Peter Mrazek and James Reimer walk in free agency, it pretty much was a no-brainer that Freddie would be joining the bunch of jerks down in Raleigh. I think this move could go either way, really. Either Andersen struggles or he has a bounce-back season. As a netminder who was facing nagging injuries last season, didn't seem like himself in net. From a sentimentality standpoint though, I think it makes sense, as Carolina was actually the first team to originally draft Andersen in the 7th round back in 2010. Regardless, after bringing in Andersen and Antti Raanta, Waddell ultimately did get what he wanted: age and experience between the pipes. Well, if you can't win a cup with your dad's old team, why not sign with their biggest rival instead? I mean, Foligno could be onto something here. In all seriousness, with Jake DeBrusk's future up in the air, the uncertainty surrounding David Krejci's return, the signing to me does make sense. And really, when I think of the style that Foligno plays, it seems to fit perfectly into the Bruins' agenda. As in, they'll be getting a gritty two-way forward who plays on a constant edge. He's not afraid to drop the mitts and stand up for his teammates, and is definitely a character guy that you want in your locker room to get the team going. While $3.8 million does seem a little high considering his recent offensive decline statistically, knowing about the intangibles that Foligno will bring make it seem worth every penny in my mind. Okay, so the Oilers overpaying Zach Hyman makes some sense, as it's pretty much a known concept that to attract free agents to Edmonton, it requires extra compensation. But the real stumper here for me is, well, for one, why Pittsburgh let CC walk in the first place, but also the Oil's newly constructed back end. As to me, out of the three pairings, only one D-man really stands out as being a top caliber blue liner, and Darnell Nurse. Yes, Barry did have a great season offensively last campaign, but apparently most people felt the same way I did, as it was largely circumstantial, due to the fact that Barry, despite finishing with the most points amongst defensemen last season, received not one single Norris vote. So looking at it now, they have Barry, Duncan Keith, and now Cody Ceci, who was actually pretty valuable in Pittsburgh, but I'm just not sure if this was the right amount in term to deal out to a guy that spent the majority of his last season on the third pairing. Yeah, maybe a year on a trial basis would have been better considering how much the blue line has changed recently with the losses of Ethan Bear and Adam Larson. It just seems like a gamble here for Holland to wager on, in my opinion.